Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Gets Critical, brought to you in part by Xaereth Prevails, the Grand Arena story. To those new to this series, all we're doing here is taking someone else's Grand Arena match and discussing all of the good things, the bad things, the hilarious things, the hilariously bad things, the awful things, the inappropriate things, all of those things. Lots of things. And we're gonna analyze stuff and things, and it's gonna be a good time. So first, I want to give a shout out to my patrons. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. Today we're going to cover a match between my buddy Niro and a dude named The Rise of Taco Walker, and it's in the strange land of Division 2, which it looks the same as Division 1. It's just a little bit less GP, and you can see that neither of them have a huge amount of relics. That's pretty indicative of that GP level. Totally fine. Niro has more Gear 13 characters, and it looks like Taco Dude has way more Gear 12 characters. So, it's all coming from, a really focused roster versus kind of a more dispersed roster. Hard to tell which one is going to have the advantage. Now, you can see a pretty clear advantage here in the overall rankings and stats of the two of them. Niro has a significant lead in terms of success in Grand Arena. So, let's move into the match here. Now, before you decide to, not watch this because it's Division 2 and you don't think it's relevant, I will argue that Division 2 is actually still very relevant. There's a lot of really competitive play to be found in Division 2, and, if you want to start an alt or something, that's also, this is going to be way more relevant than seeing like those really high level, 5.7 million matches. So anyways, this is Niro's defense, and we'll actually look at his defense and how they did at the end of the video, but they're actually in order by the map, and you guys can click back if you want to. I've decided not to edit the video further, so let's get into this now. The first match here is against a Shakti clone team. It's mostly Gear 12 with somewhat low gear Cody in there instead of like Arc Trooper, I believe would be the better fill in. And it's an okay squad. Like, it's not that developed. It only has a couple Zetas, for instance. But Niro is taking TRAI here, and I think TRAI can be a really strong option against Shakti in the right circumstances. In general, though, I would say that TRAI is probably a pretty indifferent counter to these clones. Like, I don't know how it would do, like against like a max TRAI squad versus a max clone squad. I just don't know how the matchup would go. I would guess that the clones would probably have the advantage. In the earlier stages, you need to be able to match the clones for gear, and this is why, like, they can do an incredible amount of damage. Rex can still do his huge burst attack, and really the only thing that's saving this TRAI squad right now is Malak. And Malak, even at Gear 11 with less than 7 stars, he's still really good at tanking all of these hits, especially against these relatively low-level clones. So that was a great move on Niro's part, taking Malak in here, because without Malak, I really think that probably the TRAI squad would have died. Like, you saw that Rex just now did his big Annihilate move, and that move would have killed any of the other characters besides Malak. Malak is immune to that kind of damage, or at least functionally immune, and so he was good to go. One other thing I will point out, like, getting Isolate onto Shakti is probably the best move available here. Niro put it on Cody. Cody's good because he can call a mass assist, so that's good. I would have put Isolate onto Shakti because she's the one who's affecting the squad the most. That being said, he did get through that battle with pretty decent banners, and that was an okay match. I think that probably, depending on how developed his Commander Luke team is, I probably would have taken Commander Luke instead. That's just a quibble, though. I don't think it was a terrible mistake here. Now, this Padme team is actually pretty well developed. The Padme herself is only at gear 10, but Plo is gear 12. The GK and Jedi Knight Anakin are both at gear 13. And some relics on them, I assume. And then Ahsoka's gear 11. And so, it's a pretty well developed team. I do like Padme against a First Order team with Hux. Hux has his Zeta, and he can make it so that you can't gain bonus turn meter, but Padme already can't gain bonus turn meter. The only thing I don't like about this is First Order just isn't really enough of a threat to warrant a somewhat well-developed Padme squad, especially this early on. Like, later in the match, when we know all of the different teams that are going to be around, I would say definitely, it's a pretty good match. You're going to get okay banners. And one small quibble, I would say, just don't take Plo here. Plo doesn't really do much. May as well undersize it, get a banner or two back out of it. Commander Luke could have three-manned that team pretty well. But I don't know yet what Niro is doing with Commander Luke, if he has plans for him or what. Commander Luke is great for clearing that front zone, though. Now, Troopers against Night Sisters is really great. It's Troopers with Night Sisters, or against Night Sisters with Nest, which is really risky. I think that I actually talked to Niro about this particular matchup, and he said that he's pretty comfortable, with taking Troopers into Night Sisters with Nest, and that's great. If he has experience with it, wonderful. That's really cool. One thing that I will say, though, is that's risky enough. I would have probably tried to do that very first. I also would have, just a minute ago, if we rewind, which I'm not going to do, Niro had the opportunity to shoot Nest with Death Trooper and try to get the daze on her. And I think that that's probably what he should have done instead of shooting at Zombie. Zombie wasn't going to do anything anyways. But as it stands, he did end up getting 56 banners here. That's good. I think he maybe could have cleaned it up a little bit, tried to get days off on Nest early on, because if she continues to counter, the Trooper team can just die super easy. That was a pretty good move on his part, though. Being able to clear a Night Sisters team with Nest is harder than it looks when you're just using Troopers. Now, Geonosians against Bounty Hunters have a really great level of success. These Bounty Hunters on defense are they're a little bit underwhelming, not because of the gear levels. The gear levels, yeah, sure, Greedo just went down like a chump. The thing that makes these Bounty Hunters kind of awful is the fact that Bosk doesn't have his taunting Zeta, so you can just dispel it once he taunts. He taunts once and he's just one and done. The Geonosians just kind of melt him. They melt this whole team, really. You can watch this all day. The Geonosians gain so much turn meter, they have so much resilience, and then the Bounty Hunters are just going to be shooting at the Brute, and the Brute doesn't actually matter that much. It overall, if he finishes with a little bit less health and protection, then it doesn't really matter. I think this is a great move on Niro's part, taking Geonosians against this Bounty Hunter team. It's the perfect investment level. Geonosians can't counter, too much. They can't counter the meta. They are a great B-level team to be able to dominate another team, and they're really efficient. You saw 60 banners, great move. So, in the back here, there's a Kira team, which is just a timeout team, and a Padme team, which is only gear 12. So, neither of them are too threatening. There's also this really underdeveloped Jedi Knight Revan team and some Ewoks. And, okay, I can see why Niro wasn't using Commander Luke to be able to, take down these harder teams, because Chewie's only gear 11, Han is only gear 10, maybe I got that backwards, and Commander Luke is gear 12. I think that this is a pretty decent reason to take Commander Luke here. Unfortunate that Chewie got dazed right there. The other two can't be dazed, but Chewie can't assist or anything now. This is a good use of Commander Luke, because Commander Luke can 3-man it, probably get 62 banners or thereabouts. And probably the First Order team was a little bit above the punching level of Commander Luke, frankly. So this is a good move. I'm used to, my alt account has a really strong Commander Luke team, so I'm used to just using them as my heavy hitters, basically. And that's not what everyone else does. Now, against the Ewoks here, you got to be careful. They can take a ton of turns if you're not careful. You want to kill Ewok, Elder first, if you possibly can, just because if you kill any of the other Ewoks, Elder's just going to revive anyways, revive them. So you may as well just try to take them out. You take Elder out first. He's not really that hard to take out anyways. He does have a lot of health if you mod him the right way, but he doesn't have really high armor or anything. So 59 banners here with a Commander Luke team. I guess it's okay. I actually expected more than that. That was a lot harder of a battle than it looked like initially. And Commander Luke, I can't stress this enough. Like, Commander Luke is a great team to work on, guys. Even in the current meta, I use Commander Luke every single match on offense. He does great. I even climb with him in arena. So, okay, so we have this Timeout team here. It's probably I wouldn't say it's the biggest threat left. That Jedi Revan team is probably the biggest threat, but you have to be careful with Timeout teams. I think this might have been a really good move on Niro's part, because only a select few teams, especially with a roster that doesn't have everything developed yet, only a select few teams are going to be able to take out a Timeout team like this, with all the, it's all Gear 12 and Gear 11, and, Kira makes them super resilient, and I think that this is probably a good move, assuming that Niro had his plan for that Jedi Revan team, which I think he does. He has Darth Revan, I saw previously, so that's not going to be a problem. One thing that I will mention as well here, though, and I don't want to rag on Niro too much here, I think that he's making good decisions. I think that it might be more wise to try to tackle the teams that are more likely to kill you, basically. Even if you feel pretty confident, I always try to tackle the teams that are the best first, just in case if I do lose, then I can readjust my plans and I still have strong teams remaining. Using Commander Luke, he probably wasn't going to be used anyways on any of these teams, for any of these counters. So that, that was just fine. But Padme does present a real threat to a Darth Revan team, especially a Darth Revan team without Malak on it. Now, obviously, Niro had the advantage in every way here, and he handled it just perfectly. He played it great. And probably the gear disparity was a huge factor in that. I just think that why not take out the harder teams first? Because if something did go sideways, then it would have been nice to have that Jedi Revan team as available as a cleanup squad or something. This last matchup, the underwhelming Jedi Revan team versus Shakti clone team, which I saw had at least a little bit of Gear 13 on it. This is probably not going to be very hard. The clones can do a huge amount of damage. I love Echo's Zeta here because every time you miss one of these characters, then it does 20% of their health damage instead. So, with all the foresight that Grandmaster Yoda is usually passing around, that's pretty nice. Now, actually, I don't think Grandmaster Yoda is on this team. This is kind of a hodgepodge Jedi Revan team, actually. Nothing much of note, but this is a pretty classic case of overkill. I like how overwhelming this offense is. I do wonder if maybe some of these teams could have been used better on defense. I don't know how efficient Niro's opponents is going to be, but it seems like maybe some of this could have been used to shore up his defense. I don't really know, though. He did need to make sure to take enough teams. So looking at his defenses later down the line, we see that the taco guy pulled a Niro here and actually killed Niro's Night Sisters on defense. And then they also used Geonosians to kill his Bosk team, so that's kind of funny. That Wedge team is really interesting against a Newt team. A pretty good result. And, Honestly, the most hilarious one here actually is General Grievous against General Grievous. Yes, you can win on an offense that is extremely inefficient, horrifyingly inefficient. And this player was clearly pretty good. Like they held a lot of teams on defense and still managed to clear Niro. That's pretty good, forcing Niro to fight a lot of really high-end teams, while they didn't really necessarily have to. They played in a good efficiency game, and in the end, it did come up just a little bit short, as you can see. Niro got the win, which is great. He was pretty efficient in most of his attacks, so I do think he probably, I would say he earned the win. There are a couple quibbles that I have now looking at the totality of circumstances. The first is I would not have taken TRAI into that clones team right at the very start. TRAI is an okay counter to that, but clearly, she struggled a little bit. I would have taken Padme instead, because Padme was going to be used against First Order. Anyways, Niro clearly planned that in advance. I would have taken the Padme team against Shakti clones and just demolished them. Yes, maybe I would have lost a few banners. That does happen, but that happened with TRAI as well. And then TRAI can just manhandle that First Order team. Even though the First Order team was a little bit better geared, I would say that TRAI team still could have probably undersized it, and honestly just saved Malak for later, for a different challenge altogether. Maybe he could have just soloed those Ewoks and not had to, rely on Commander Luke trying to gimp his way through it. So, those were a couple small quibbles I had. I guess one other thing that I do want to mention is the defense that, which I'm showing right now. Again, Niro could probably pick up his defensive game just a little bit. I don't want to be too harsh on this. He clearly had enough teams for offense. And the thing is, if your opponent is putting all of their really good teams on defense, and if they know, now that we have Grand Arena history, if they know that you can put all of your, if you're going to put all of your good teams on offense, they can put all their good teams on defense and still have a reasonable assurance that they're going to be able to clear you while making you chew through all of their really hard teams. And so, having a balanced offense and defense in this in Grand Arena in any mode, in any division, is probably going to be huge. I don't know exactly what teams Niro should put on defense, frankly. The offense is clearly, he's pretty familiar with it. He cleared this guy really fast. He did it all live. He didn't, attack, then stop and think about it. He was able to just clear them really fast. So he's clearly very familiar with this method of attack, and it's hard to break that up, but that's something I would look into if I were him. Anyways, huge shout out to Niro. Thank you so much for providing this video. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to do these videos. If anyone else is interested in me doing a video on them, doing a Xaereth Gets Critical, please just feel free to DM me. You can find my Discord server on in the video description below, and so just click on that link and hit me up. And I would love to do a Xaereth Gets Critical on whatever division you're in, as long as it's an interesting match. So, anyways, guys, I will call it here. Thank you so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails, and this time so did Niro, as he usually does.